defining global exception strategies. We can also reuse our exception handling strategies by defining them outside of a flow. We saw this for a split second with our choice exception strategy when we first dragged it in. So you can drag it in outside of any flow and it will be global. Typically, you can put these in your global configuration file. That way, just like our other global elements, they're easy to locate. Then the flows that should use that global exception strategy can reference it using the reference exception strategy component. And that's exactly what we're going to try now. We'll attempt to take our exception handler and make it global, and then make a reference to that exception handler from our main flow. This way we can specify to still use that exception handler, but be able to reuse it in other flows that might want to use the same exception strategy. Let's get started. Okay, now we're going to return to our implementation XML file. And in this case, we definitely want to go to the configuration XML. It'll make it far easier to get this out. So let's go to configuration XML. Locate your choice exception strategy that's within the get flights flow. And I'll double click here just to, well, let me shrink this maybe to make it a little bit easier to see. There we go. Okay, so in the get flights flow, you'll select your choice exception strategy, and let's cut this exception strategy out. All right. Now, while that's still on your clipboard, let's go to the global XML and also go to the config XML view inside of the global XML file. Inside of here, towards the very bottom, let's paste in that same exception strategy. And if you want to fix the indentation as well, feel free to. So we can paste in that same exception strategy, and now it is effectively defined globally inside of here. Now, as you had seen in that other example, now that it's global, we may also want to give it a name. Okay, so the name that we can provide it inside of here can be the same as the doc name, or you can name it something different as long as you're able to identify it easily. And then now that it's a global element, it can have a name. And this way, since it has a name specified, we can reference it from our other flows. All right, so let's go ahead and save up this global XML. We'll switch back to our message flow view, and now your global XML file, along with having all the items and global elements in the message flow area, will show this exception strategy visually. We'll now go back to the implementation XML, go back to the message flow here, and now this guy is absent of an exception handler. So what we'll do, I'll flip back to Mule Design so I can get my palette back. What we'll do is we'll open up the error handling box, and inside of the exception strategy area, we can use the reference exception strategy. Let's drag reference exception strategy into the error handling section here. We'll double click on the reference exception strategy, and let's make sure that it is pointed to our implementation choice exception strategy that we had just pulled out globally. All right. Let's now save the project and let's run it in normal mode, just so we can send a request through with foo and make sure that it's still working successfully as we'd expect. All right. So what we can do here now is go back to Postman. We'll make a couple observations on this one. First, we'll call flights foo and hit send. And we can see no flights to foo, just as we'd expect when we call flights directly. Now, what happens if we go in here and we call United directly? So we'll call United. You can see with United, with foo being specified, we get kind of an ugly exception again with no details about foo like we do when we call the flights endpoint that's got the exception strategy. If we call Delta directly as well, looks like we're in a pretty similar boat here. So only when we call flights, which is actually using that reference exception strategy, do we see it get utilized and send that response back. So this is something we'll dig a little bit deeper into in the next section.